Welcome to the Teamwork Advantage podcast with Greg Gregory. Join us as Greg interviews powerful thought leaders and successful team and leadership experts from across the country on teamwork, leadership, and organizational culture. Now let's check in for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Teamwork Advantage. I'm Greg Gregory, your host, where we focus in on teamwork, leadership, and culture. Season 2, our second episode here. We're excited to have with us today a gentleman who has got a wide, varied background and comes to us to talk about a lot of things today that fall in each of our three categories, whether it's culture, whether it's leadership, or whether it's teamwork, or as I call it, the TLC of business. So everybody, welcome back. Let's get right into it today. Bo Brabo is joining us today. And throughout his career, which started literally in human resources at the age of 17 years old, we'll find out about that, has always focused on human resources in his entire life. He started out, as I said, about 17 years old, and he's always worked up to executive levels and human resources as a senior vice president. He's also been presidential communications office in the presidents under Bush and Obama. He's also published author and speaker. He's founded Hale Media Group, as well as the Brabo Center of Excellence. Robert Bo Brabo, welcome to the Teamwork Advantage.
Hey, Greg, it is awesome to be here. I love it.
Yeah, we're excited. I love to have a little bit of fun through here. And again, we teased in just the opening there about you. 17 years old, human resources. Yeah. That's not what somebody would think about. So tell us a little bit about that.
You know, it surely isn't. So back in the mid 80s, we used to have, I don't even know if they exist today, career day every year in the high school. Yep. And on this particular career day, when I was in the 11th grade, the big show, that everybody went to in the library had the most attendance was the local Army National Guard recruiter. So I guess he put on their team put on this great big kind of exciting event, got you all pumped up. Of course, I was in the room telling you about all these wonderful, amazing things you can do if you join the Army National Guard. So
now that's fascinating that the Army National Guard had the largest draw of people for a career day.
It was incredible. It was packed.
What were they giving away?
No, I think we walked out with a little gift bag of T-shirt and some things, but they were just, I don't know, they were just really interesting. They were good at their jobs. They knew how to talk and speak and be inspiring and motivating. A couple hundred kids in that room, and it wasn't shortly thereafter, probably within a week or two, where I was sitting in that recruiter's office in a one-on-one type of conversation, and the office was decked out in tanks and parachutist posters on the walls. And the recruiter, I remember specifically, asked me what I wanted to do. And I came up with this answer that I wanted to do something around business. And I was like, you have anything around like business administration? And he's
that's
like,
not what most people go to the Army for.
No, and who knows where that came from. But that's what I said. And he opened up back then, of course, there's no internet to look up stuff. So he opened up his big like a big textbook of all these different jobs that you could have inside of the Army. And he just started looking for administration, and he come across personnel administration. He's like, well, I don't have business administration, but I have personnel administration. I was like, well, that sounds close enough to me. And here I was 17. I didn't know any different. So when I was excited to join, and I chose personnel administration, I had the test scores for it. So that was the skill set that I was assigned. And off to boot camp I went after my junior year of high school. And then I participated in my 1 weekend a month drills during my senior year of high school. And then I went off to my advanced training to learn how to be a personnel administration specialist in the United States Army National Guard at the age of 18. And that was my job. That's what I did. I did that for 6 years while I was going through college. And then once I finished that 6 years, I was only out for about 9 months. And I had missed the uniform. I really wanted to wear it full time and not just on the weekends. Okay. So I went back on active duty. And of course, I was already trained, so I didn't have to do any more training.
You didn't have to go through basic training.
No basic training. I did that. I had already had that finished, completed that after my junior year of high school. So I was fully trained and ready. So they just put me on my first assignment out to Fort Carson, Colorado, in the early 90s. And that was all she wrote for me. And then 20 years later, I retired, 2013.
Wow. That's impressive. So, let me ask you a question here.
Yeah.
You can kind of remember back to your basic training days. Again, you were in junior and high school, so I don't know how tough it could have been on you back then. But
it was, it was brutal. But I write about this in my book. That time frame, having done that at 17 years of age, that I learned so much in those 9 weeks and in that summer. I about many things, about values, about discipline and commitment and diversity and inclusion. And, this was my first experience to this hodgepodge of what we call the melting pot of the United States, with 300, about 300 men from, all backgrounds, you name it, all coming together and all getting treated like crap. At the same time, didn't matter who you were. That's where I learned how to become green. Like you all come in, you're your own race, but at the end, when you graduate, everybody's Army green, and it's a brother. Right. Yeah. It was fascinating. And to have that at 17, when I look back on that, it was a real blessing.
So let me ask you this do you remember your primary drill instructor?
I remember all three of them.
Okay. What did you think of your primary instructor about the third day of your basic training?
Yeah, I hated him. I hated him for sure.
Well, let's jump forward 9 weeks. What did you think of that same person?
Oh, then you're giving them a high five because they're so proud of you. They're like the father figure that takes control of you. And they at the end of 9 weeks, they built you into something. They tore you down, but they tore you down for a reason because they needed to get everybody on the same playing field. And then they built everybody back up. And then after 9 weeks, you were a soldier, and that's how they treated you.
Yeah. And I have asked that question on this program several times with a lot of our guests. And by the way, I do want to say thank you for your service. Thanks. All 20 years of active duty plus your National Guard duty. So I want to thank you for that.
Thanks.
And I've asked that question about a lot of folks over the years. I've had several that have graduated from different academies, whether it's the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, whether they've been in the Marine Corps or the United States Army, doesn't matter. And they've all said basically the exact same thing. They really couldn't stand their instructors at the beginning. And I always choose the third day because in the Marine Corps, that's the first day they're allowed to sleep.
Oh, wow.
They're given sleep deprivation the first 3 days.
It's crazy.
And so it's very powerful to understand that because it is the quintessential of a building of a great team. It takes you down to that foundational level.
I agree completely.
So you were in the military, you were personnel management, you decided to get out, you retired in 2013. What did you do then?
I went, I followed the HR career path, if you will. And I started actually probably about 2 years before I retired. I knew that I had planned on retiring when I did, but I needed to prepare myself for the corporate world. So I started the continuing education type of thing outside of academia to make sure that I could transition all of my military human resources skills and knowledge into the civilian world. So
it is similar, but it is different.
It's similar, but different. That's a great way to put it. So I knew that I took a lot of time to do that, countless hours studying, going after the professional certifications. And I'd landed with, which was fitting, went right into a government contractor in the Washington, D.C. area as their VP of HR. So at least at that point, number one, I understood human resources well, leadership, hands down, how to build culture, how to build teams. But I also understood the line of work that they were in, having worked with numerous contractors throughout the years.
Right.
So from having the business acumen side of things and understanding what the business was there for, it was really the right kind of position to transition into coming out of the military. So
while in the military, you were fortunate enough, you were stationed, I believe you were saying, at the Navy Yard in DC.
Yeah, Anacostia Navy Annex.
Anacostia Navy Annex. And while stationed there, you got a job working in the White House is doing what? And again, it was
Yeah.
under two different presidents, two different regimes, two different parties. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah. I was recruited and I interviewed for the White House Communications Agency, and their headquarters is at, today it's called Joint Base Bowling Anacostia.
Joint base bowling, exactly.
Joint Base Bowling, right. That's where the headquarters is at. And then I did that before going on my tour to Germany, which led me to Iraq as well. But I was recruited. I happened to have previously worked for the chief of HR in a different assignment. And when he got to the White House Communications Agency, he called me one day and he said, "Bo, I have an opportunity of a lifetime for you. I want you to come work with me at the White House." So it was the inside military network put to work, and it does work. So I interviewed for the job. That got me in there the first time. I was there for a few years. Went and I was doing a lot of recruiting because we recruited all of our own people. And then I went to Germany, went to Warrant Officer School. I went to Germany, and then I actually interviewed for the job to go back and replace him. So the gentleman that recruited me to get there in the first place, he was retiring, and I interviewed with the command to go back and actually take over his role, which I did. That was in 2006. And then I was the chief of HR operations, running the HR team. And the most glorious part of it was they took all officers and put us through a training academy to be trained and qualified as presidential communications officers, because every president seems to travel more than the previous president, regardless of the administration. They all travel a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
it's becoming easier and easier.
Yeah. And there's only so many people to support those efforts. So it was really an organizational team effort where we had full-time communications officers, and that's all they did. And then I would say people like myself we were called additional duty, but it's like having a part-time job on top of your full-time job. And then you get in the rotation and you start leading the teams like I did in and around Washington, D.C., the U.S., overseas, and so forth. And I did that for the last 7.5 years of my career before I retired.
So obviously, I mean, there's a whole lot of talk all the time about the White House and the press corps and the communications officers and everything that has to do, the White House press secretaries. All of those people kind of come through that same realm at some point or another, I assume. So let's suffice it to say, I'm assuming that your day could start off normal at 7 a.m. and by 7:10, it's all a kaflooey. Is that about right?
Yeah, that is possible. Absolutely possible. But I think that's what a lot of people would imagine. And it was possible. Didn't happen very often. The schedule was very tight. And it pretty much went off without a hitch, unless something is happening in the world that would deflect it. Right. It pretty much went off the way that it was supposed to happen. But in doing so, I mean, we had so many living and breathing standard operating procedures and checklists and, you name it, to make sure that things did go as smoothly as they possibly could go. We called it operating within a zero defect environment.
Zero defect environment. I like that phrase.
Yeah. It's a good one. And it's true.
So when you're trying to operate inside of that, and then you're going to private sector, I get the feeling that a lot of times communications is very lackadaisical at times like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's it like trying to direct a communications team inside of something as powerful as the White House.
Yeah. So the benefit is you truly have some of the best and the brightest that the military has to offer. That makes up these teams. And then everybody gets trained and developed in a process. So, the example would be, even if it's for me on the presidential communications officer leading the team, after I train, they don't just take me and say, okay, you're going to go lead this trip to Germany. There was a progression on the types of events, types of trips that you would lead. And the teams, same with the teams and all the disciplines within the teams, whether they're doing audio visual, radio communications, satellite communications, didn't matter. There was a progression within those career fields, well defined, how you would move from one level to the next, and so forth. And it was adhered to without question.
So it wasn't the fact that, oh, you've been here long enough, you're going to get the next promotion. That was not part of it.
That was not part of it.
Exactly.
No, it had
kind of
nothing.
like the major leagues in baseball.
Mhm.
You've got 3 levels of minor leagues before that.
Yes, and it's performance based. So
Yes.
So if you're in the minor leagues for 5 years, fine, you're making money, but you could have a rookie come up and just be an ultimate performer. The next thing you know, they're making the leap into the majors, right?
Yeah.
So not time based. Yeah. So was one of those interesting things. Of course, we respected rank. It's the military and so forth. But I had once you got to a certain level, I did plenty of what we called qualification check rides, where I would have colonels that definitely outranked me, but on this particular event, I would be the what we called the check ride officer, making sure they were doing what they needed to be doing. And if anything was going a little haywire, it was up to me to basically take over and have the ability to do that. And that's the authority that I had, because I was further along in the qualification and in the experience than that person. So rank was it was respected, but it's put to the side, if that makes sense.
While it's respected, and that makes sense, if you ever had to do something like that with a superior ranking officer, they also respected the fact that you had the other side of that you had more experience in that, and they would give way.
Yes. Yeah. I never experienced anything other than that. Yeah. And then
that's the powerful part that people fail to recognize is leadership is not about the position. It's about what you're able to do.
I agree.
And if there's respect up and down, there was in the United States Air Force, January 31st, 2006, I believe is the exact date, was the first all-female flight crew to fly a refueling mission into Afghanistan.
Wow.
And the boom operator is enlisted, and you've got a major flying the plane. And yet when they're doing the fueling, the communication goes from the enlisted person.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful to understand how that level of respect worked in that cockpit.
Yeah. And that's, I think that is the result. If you think about that crew and the seriousness of that type of operation where you're actually refueling in air, I'm sure there's lots that could go wrong. Building a high performing team. And these are great conversations when you talk about how does that team actually function. You have to have that. It's the up and down respect and trust and confidence in each of the team members' abilities and what they're responsible to do and when they're going to do it. I think it's the same as when you have Navy SEAL teams and Special Forces teams.
Yes.
And everybody has their role. And in reality, probably anybody on that team could lead the mission because they're that good, but they also understand the expectations of each person on the team, and they're going to have confidence that they're going to actually perform to the best of their ability on every single mission.
And at the core underlying level is a level of trust.
Trust,
no
100%.
doubt.
No
so
doubt.
That kind of brings me to the point. We're talking trust. We're talking about getting the respect in there. I'm also assuming that kind of comes under values a little bit.
Sure.
And you're somebody who focuses on values-based leadership.
I do.
And so that's the values-based leadership is something that's been tossed around for years. So why don't you kind of just give us a 30-second explanation of what you view values-based leadership and how it works?
Yeah. So if we start at the top, values-based leadership, and whether you're the CEO of the company, you're the general of the military unit, it doesn't matter. If you're the president, you're the top of the company. Your values will dictate how you behave. And I even put that in a formula that if you don't really know what your values are, well, let's just watch your behaviors for a week and we'll figure them out. And how you actually show up to work and the actions that you demonstrate. So if you have set values and you're behaving accordingly, those are the types of behaviors you should want to emulate or see emulated throughout your organization. So that's what should be communicated. That's what should be written in job descriptions. That's what should be hired for. And how people communicate in their interviews when they're interviewing people, because it's those values that are going to help build and find the type of talent that is a good fit for your organization. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. And then
yeah,
the values come into play. And then, so how do values tie to culture?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time on this, and I put this formula in the first chapter of my book. Because we're behavioral based, I mean, we're individuals, we're humans, we all behave in a certain way, and then we go to work and behave over time. And when you sum up everybody's behaviors in your organization, right, the right side of the equation is culture. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, when you put everybody in a room, so to speak, and everybody's working and behaving, well, that's going to determine what the environment is like in your organization. So I've always viewed culture as an outcome or a result of.
Okay.
And it goes back to behavior and how people are behaving. So if you want to impact, if you don't have a good culture and you want to change your culture, you're going to, at some point, you're going to have to look at how people are actually behaving and how they're performing. What are they doing? From top to bottom.
From top to bottom. So if you've got a team and you've got your values-based concepts and your core values, if you will, and people are behaving outside of those values, suffice it to say, they're not a good fit on that team. Is that right?
Yeah, that could be where, that could actually be the case. They may they just may not be a good fit because their personal values are just never going to align with those of your company or your team.
And it's okay, because it doesn't mean that they're bad values. It doesn't mean that they're bad people either.
Right. That's right.
It just isn't a fit for that team.
It's not a fit for that team. That's right.
It's like Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, years ago wrote, get the great people on the bus, get them in the right seats. But then the key thing most people miss is get the wrong people off the bus.
True. That's right. That's why you can't take a specific set of values and necessarily apply them.
There's no carte blanche.
Right. It has, and when we start at the top, if you might be the founder of the company or you're the CEO, whatever the case might be, it really starts there because that's where the buck stops. So if I'm the CEO of the company and I'm all for integrity or loyalty or duty, and I don't communicate that to the company and to everybody that we're bringing in the company, you might not find the people that think the same as you. And not that they have to think the same as you, but have the similar set of values.
Similar set of values, exactly.
Right.
Because we don't want people to think exactly the same, because then we get into a robotic society.
Right. So thinking is one thing, but how people actually behave, how they treat each other, how they treat the company, how they present themselves outside of the company, in their behaviors. If they don't align, that's when you're going to have problems. You're going to have, high turnover and teams that don't function in a high performance type of.
Whereas I like to call them dysfunctional teams too.
Dysfunctional teams. That's right.
As opposed to being cohesive. So when we're trying to get those together and build high performing teams, what are some of the things that from your book and from your experience, both in the military and in private sector, what are some of the strengths that you're looking at there? What do you look for to build a high performing team?
Yeah. So I'm looking at, in basic set, I'm looking for competency in their skills, their technical skills. I'm looking for alignment in their values, a high level of trust and confidence that you can place in that individual to show up and do the best that they can in the job that they're hired to do. I'm looking for leadership that cares about the team 100% and not just the team, but understands who their families are, what's going on the home front.
Let's take a time out on that one for a second, because that is so powerful. So I want you to back up and hit that one a little bit more. Sure. People think that I go to work, I work. It's none of your damn business what my personal life is. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think, and if that's the case, then I don't think you're ever going to be part of a high performing team. Because when you talk values-based leadership, and if you're on my team and I'm the leader of that team, I need to know, or I have a desire to know all about you, because I want to know what impacts you day to day. So if I don't, if I'm not aware, if I don't have awareness that you're having trouble at home or your children are being homeschooled all the time, and you don't have that you need breaks in order to help them with their homework or get them set up in their Zoom room, which is common for today. If I don't know those personal things about you, not that I have no desire to place judgment. I just want to be able to help and fit in and make sure that as the leader, I'm creating an environment for you to excel. And
exactly. And that's what a lot of people miss. And there's some people, and I've worked with a lot of different military groups over the years,
Mhm.
and there's some people who think that's leading with the carrot versus leading from the stick.
Yeah, interesting.
And some people are struggling grasping it because 40, 50 years ago, it was strictly lead by a stick, no carrot. The carrot's important, but if you take the carrot too far, you got to find that balance.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah, you got to find the balance, and you have to make sure that you, because I've seen this happen. If you get too close to any particular person on the team, human nature is it might appear that you get favoritism to one person over the other, and those types of things. Yep. So it really takes real, genuine, authentic effort from the leader.
There's the two key words: genuine and authentic.
Right, across the board. Mm-hmm. And I think when you've achieved that, or when you're that person and that's how you approach leadership, your team knows that. And they know 100% that you're not favoring anyone over the other. Yeah.
All right. So you had a couple other points on your high performing teams. I interrupted you there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, I was talking about, well, you said it earlier, the trust and the confidence. We talked, you got to understand who the person is personally, family, their background. Mm-hmm. Because when you, I think the key is when you know about a person and when you have the whole person concept in mind, you'll understand and you'll witness when they're not at the top of their game any particular day, right? And you'll take action on that, meaning you might just have to pull them aside, find out what's going on, what's happening, and it's not a week or a month or a quarter gone by, and then maybe you're not hitting your numbers or you didn't meet your project goals. You're addressing these things head on when they happen or when they're happening, so that you can make adjustments as necessary. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Those in-flight corrections are so critical.
Yeah, right.
They really are.
Exactly.
So if we look at some of that as that kind of to pull together, let's kind of tie this together now if we can.
Okay. Between
knowing what we've got to do for high-performing teams, and one of the things that from other people that I've spoken with, and by the way, just in all fairness here, I've never served in the United States military. It's the one regret that I personally had in my life. I've got a great deal of respect for our military. But one of the things the military, I do believe, teaches is a process or systems.
Sure.
So now we take systems that you get and you have to blend that with building a high-performing team. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I love the topic because process and systems, we even talk about those a lot on our podcast. And to make it as simple as possible, when you think process, I try to just use the analogy of, you sit down and it's today we might call it calendar blocking. Or making sure that your team has a checklist as detailed as possible, that it's a living checklist. So if you need to change something and update it, you do that. They need to have some place to go to see this is how we go from point A to point Z. Building systems and processes is a way to meet expectations, to meet your goals. And when you build a system, it helps you lead within that system. So go ahead.
Well, what do you say to people who say, when you have a system that tight, you're restricting me and I can't be free, I can't be creative?
Yeah. So then I say, well, then work on your communication, because that's not the point of the system. You want creativity, you want innovation. Mm-hmm. Set time aside for innovation sessions and then run an innovation session that maybe looks at the system. And is the system working the way it should be worked, or does it need tweaks? Right. The system isn't a set it and forget it type of thing. It's gotta work, and it's gotta produce, and it's gotta get you to meet your expectations or exceed your expectations. And the communication aspect of it with your team, when you have a high performing team, everybody has a voice. Everybody's empowered to speak up and talk, because if they don't, well, then you're going to be yeah, you might be in a world of hurt,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in a crazy time. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. I mean, the pandemic is still in place. We've got people still, a lot of folks working from home. We got a lot of people who cannot physically get to work still. Businesses are shutting down. What are you seeing in those places where people are working? A number of my clients are all working, 90% remote. There's going to be some changes coming down the line the next 3 to 5 years with all that. What are you seeing as far as challenges that organizations are facing from the human resource aspect? And what are some companies, your clients, doing to overcome them and thrive?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges that hit HR over the past 10 months when the pandemic hit is that everybody was looking, and in my networks, everybody's looking to them to have the answers on what to do next.
On demand.
And on demand type of answers, and not really understanding that whether it's a pandemic or, it's an airline that, had a plane mishap or something, that it's crisis. And now you're in crisis leadership. And there's a lot of people that have never, ever had that type of experience. So I think HR got put in this stronghold of looking for all the answers around people, and while they're trying to figure it all out for themselves as well. Lots of stress, lots, higher stress times.
And crisis management's a whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing, right? And you really never know when you're during crisis. A lot of people are looking for someone to emerge as the leader to take them through, get them through the crisis. And that doesn't necessarily, that could be anybody. Doesn't have to be the CEO, doesn't have to be the head of HR. It could be somebody who has that type of acumen and experience to step up and keep things in check.
It's interesting you brought up, you got into the crisis management aspect. We had a guest on last season's podcast, Dr. Mary Kelly, graduate of the United States Naval Academy and the first female commander of a naval ship, also hitting heavily in the crisis management aspect of this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, two strong military backgrounds come at it, and you're coming at a lot from the same direction that she was.
Yeah.
Talking about that, and that's so powerful.
It is powerful. And, our first season of our podcast, the gentleman who wrote the foreword to my book, Mike Barger, he's was a co-founder of JetBlue Airways. But he was a former Navy Top Gun fighter pilot and chief instructor before he got out of the Navy and started JetBlue with his brother. But we had the similar conversation. And I think one of the most powerful things he said when we're talking about crisis, people are looking for information, and there's a ton of information. Whether you're turning on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, you can get different information about the same
or any
topic.
One of the social media sites,
or any social media site, right? Or social media warriors out there. So inside of your company, it's very important to have a source of information for all of your employees. Even if today you have no new information, that's still information to put out. Right. So that your employees know that you're still on it. You're keeping track of things the best that you can, and you're conveying the message to your employees on a daily basis, even if nothing has changed.
And that's key. Even if nothing has changed, we need to say, guys, I just want to give you an update here. Nothing new has changed from where we are today. Boom, 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 boom. Because if you don't, they're going to think you're hiding something.
That's right. So be transparent. Be a source of information, even if there's no information.
And that's important in organizations when they're going through change, whether or not they're in a crisis management or not.
Right. Absolutely. It's communication is it's the centerpiece of all of it.
And it's interesting because I had another guest, Captain Charlie Plum, who was a Vietnam vet, and he was a prisoner of war for over 2,000 days.
Wow.
And how he communicated with other prisoners is a fascinating story, because it's about communication. It's about how we get our information. It's about what we learn and being able to dissect it.
Yep.
I don't care what we do at what level, whether we're talking in the White House, doing things for the president of the United States, or we're in a manufacturing plant, there are similarities that go there. Am I right?
You are right.
So
absolutely.
What are some of those things that you would recommend? Give us 2 or 3 things from a communications point that are critical for anybody to take into in a leadership or a team lead type of a position?
Yeah, one of the things that I loved, that I tried, that I have taken with me everywhere I've gone since leaving, um, is is truly, and it takes time and it takes effort, but man, does it really help your teams? And that's having a daily, in the military we call them a daily stand up, or a daily meeting. And I'm not talking a huddle meeting, a huddle, yeah. And we're not talking hours, right? We're talking
10 minutes.
10 minutes, 15 minutes, get everybody together. This is, quick update on what's happening. Go over anything that you may be having a problem with, or where you're stuck. Those were things when we were leading events for the president that we did every single day, officially. And then you have different checkpoints during the day where you're checking in with your team to make sure that they have what they need to get their job done. Everything's going okay, or whatever the case might be. So you can address situations or problems as they occur and not down the road.
Right.
I think
the quicker we can make those changes, the ability to pivot, the better strength anybody in the organization is going to have.
Right. And I think that comes along with fostering an environment where people can speak, regardless of their position. They need to be able to speak and elevate these issues, or even areas where they need help, so you can address them. Because it's only afterwards that if you don't address them, where things go wrong, and then you have bigger problems.
Yeah. Full service Marriott hotels, they do a huddle meeting between every shift.
Yeah, perfect. I love that.
And they're 7 to 12 minutes. That type of situation. There's a restaurant group called Hillstone. They do it, and then they have the ability for any member to call a huddle meeting anytime they need to during a shift to address a situation that's going on. Yep.
I had a great conversation with an American Airlines pilot, that the airline, they put in a process for any of the crew members, and it was a result of a mishap, where then the airline took the step where any crew member, from the flight attendant to the captain of the plane, that while in flight, they can call a safety check, right? If they see something, and just huddling or on their intercom between the 8 to 12 crew members that might be flying or part of that flight, any single one of them, regardless of the position, can call a safety check. They see something, whatever the case might be, and it's got to go around the horn to every single crew member to give input. So didn't have to come from the captain, right?
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
I loved it. I thought that was great.
Those are the things. Well, I appreciate the time we've got today. Real quickly, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book? If you got a copy of it, go ahead and hold it up.
I don't have a copy of it. It's From the Battlefield to the White House to the Boardroom: Leading Organizations to Values-Based Results. Forward by Mike Barger, former JetBlue Airways co-founder. It's available on Amazon. You can get signed copies on our website at robertbrabo.com. If anybody needs to get in touch with me.
Let's slow that down. That's Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Brabo, B-R-A-B-O.com.
That's right. Yep. And we just launched a new e-learning platform called the Brabo Center of Excellence. And we are approved by both. We're an approved provider of continuing education for HR professional recertifications. So
terrific.
Yeah. So that's what 2021 is all about, helping others be the best at what they do.
Well, like we talked about, teamwork, leadership, and culture, they all kind of come together around there. And I think in the core of each one of those is good communication, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
So, again, I appreciate it. We've only had a few minutes to be here today. I'd like to have you come back again sometime. We'll sit down and do another chat and go into some detail. And again, you can go to robertbrabo.com to get more information on him personally. You've got a podcast as well. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Our podcast, which you can also access from the website, robertbrabo.com, is The Bo and Luke Show. The Bo and Luke Show: to be, know, and do better. We have 47 episodes out currently. Anchor Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Audible, wherever you get your podcast.
Yep.
New episode. Yep. New episode every week.
Terrific. Well, again, I appreciate your time today. My philosophy, folks, as you all know that have been listening to the Teamwork Advantage, is do not have a good day, because a good day is just being average. And do you want to go out and have an average day? So don't have a good day. Go make it an awesome day. Until next week, with a new person, a new leader, a new person sharing information about teamwork, leadership, and culture, right here on the Teamwork Advantage. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Teamwork Advantage with Greg Gregory. Be sure to like, subscribe, and activate the bell icon to be notified of future episodes. To learn more about how Greg can help your organization develop a powerful winning culture, visit TeamsRock.com. That's TeamsRock.com.